You see, that's what church is about. Church is about you and I trying to figure out, God, how do I live the life you designed me for? So this week I was reading something, and I thought, man, that's true of most of us. So I copied it and put it in my phone. It said this: most of us are just trying to do our best to get ahead, to pay our bills, to raise our family, to fall in love, to have more fun, to reach the potential of our lives. We're just looking for simple ways to be a little happier and make our lives a little better. And we're not only looking for those resources for ourselves, we're looking for the people in our lives who need them too. You see, that's what church is about. Church is about you and I trying to figure out, God, how do I live the life you designed me for? How do I enjoy my time on this earth in your presence and with other people? How do I engage the world around me as you would want me to? And that's why Jesus came. See, when Jesus arrived, he knew that the world that we live in was a mess. And he recognized that there was a spiritual battle. Jesus' entire life, from his birth until his death, was engaged in a spiritual battle to set you and I free. But you know what the good news is? We're going to celebrate it in a couple weeks. Is that Jesus returned to life. He came back to life. And so he broke the hold of death and evil over our world. Now, it doesn't mean that evil doesn't still exist, but you and I can live through a relationship with him in the presence of evil. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies, he says. That's David. You say, so you and I, we can have victory. We can have victory in the face of the spiritual battle. And Jesus is our model, all right? Don't choose any other model than Jesus because it won't work. And so we've been talking about that. Let me do a real quick review. I've got my notes so that I can make sure I don't get it wrong, right? The first week we talked about our attitude. We talked about how humility and meekness was Jesus' way of living. His attitude every day was he's not better than anybody else. And yet he was, wasn't he? And yet he didn't have the attitude that he somehow deserved something better. And he lived among us. He ate with us and he hung out with us. Jesus' attitude. And see, if you and I can have that attitude that he had, then we'll be a lot better off. Then secondly, Jesus' authority. Jesus understood that his authority didn't come from within himself. It came from the Father. And he taught us to look to the Father. And he said, I and the Father are one, right? And he said, if you want to be fruitful, if you want to do well, then you've got to abide in me. He talked about the vine and the branches in John 15. And so that's what it's about. Well, today we want to take the third step, and that's Jesus' approach. What was Jesus' approach to life? And I submit to you that Jesus' approach to life was faith. Was faith. You know, in Hebrews chapter 11, verse 6, it says, it is impossible. Say impossible. It's impossible without faith to please God. So if you and I try to please God through our works, it won't work. If you and I try to please God with our words, it won't work. It has to be connected to faith. And so today, what we want to do is we want to unpack, well, how did Jesus work that out in his life? How did Jesus give us an example of faith? What did he do? And so that's where I want to begin. It's with conversations with the Father, all right? And if you want to be the A student and want to know where we're going next week, we're going to talk about the appeal. Jesus' appeal, okay? And we're going to talk about the kingdom next week, all right? So, the kingdom of heaven, all right? So, Jesus' approach to life was built around faith in the Father, that God's going to provide everything. If you have a Bible, open it up, or if you've got a phone, open it up to Matthew chapter 14, the whole chapter, okay? In Matthew chapter 14, we have first the story of John the Baptist being beheaded. Now, you realize why that happened, right? Because John the Baptist addressed a political leader for his immoral lifestyle. Ouch. But the scripture doesn't advocate that John the Baptist should be quiet, does it? Jesus actually said he's going to be remembered above other people because he pushed back on the political system of his day. And you and I, we have people today that want you and I to be quiet about morality in the public square as God followers. We can't if we're going to be like John the Baptist. Now that's a hard one, isn't it? That's a harsh reality that you and I have to really take a hold of and mull it over in our minds and our hearts before God.